Okay, we're live. So today we're starting a new series. We actually started it 2 weeks ago, where every week we cover a different age group. 2 weeks ago we started with newborns, and now we are doing 1 month olds. Okay, here's Dr. Grant, and I am going to put her on live with us because it's going to be the two of us. Here she comes. And again, I'm in the car. This is a theme. Hold on. Here she is.
Hi,
Fantastic.
everybody.
Hey, Jess. How are you?
I'm good. Living the dream.
Where are you? It's very colorful there.
Oh, I'm just sitting in my bedroom in front of a cabinet
Oh,
due to the fact that
pretty.
the rest of my room looks crazy.
I love it. It's much more exciting than my background, which is my car again. Anyway, I was just briefly going through what we're doing. And so I was just saying that we are starting a series where every week we discuss a different age group. And this is hopefully going to be sort of a library for parents moving on, that they can go back and watch these as they, grow with us in our practice. So 2 weeks ago we did newborns, and this week we're going to do 1 month olds. Next week we'll do 2 month olds. And so we'll sort of go through everything we feel you need to know, um, at each stage. So we'll talk about feeding, sleeping, development, and sort of like things to think about, things to worry about, things not to worry about. And we're here sort of to answer any of your questions about your children at that particular age. And we will save these and make a little bit of a library um, for parents, so that as their kids grow, they can watch each of these videos and kind of get a feeling for what to expect and what to think about. So welcome to the, sort of second um, issue of this series. And today we're going to talk about 1 month olds. I don't know if Jess, you want to start, take it from here, and then I can add in as time goes on.
Sure. I think the first thing to say about 1 month old is that they may be beginning to wake up a little bit more, and therefore becoming a little bit more difficult. Oftentimes, those first couple weeks, they're super sleepy, and it's almost like you said before, the honeymoon period. And oftentimes by now, they're beginning to wake up, and I think that, for me at least, it was a little bit of a low point. My hormones were still really high, my sleep was still really low, my babies were both fairly fussy babies, and they don't give a lot back yet. I love them, but I don't know that it was necessarily a happy period. So I'd like to say
Right.
to all parents around this age to really hang in there. The first few months I think are really tough. They really begin to settle around 3 to 4 months. They begin to become a little bit more people who interact with you, who work on sleep a lot then. So for a lot of parents who come in a month, my goal is just get through this period, hang in there. It's a necessary part, but it really does get better eventually, I promise.
Yeah, I say the same
Not
thing. I'm always like, it's
great.
temporary. You're going to get through it. Every once in a while, you have that 1 month old that's very relaxed and the parents are getting sleep, but that's definitely the exception. And I always tell people, like, everything is temporary. Like, this is not forever. This happens to be an extremely 1 month old, sort of 4 to 6 week period tends to be really, really challenging for families often. As you said, babies wake up more, and I feel like they don't sleep as long in terms of like their naps. The first couple weeks they're sleeping and taking these long naps, and you're a little bit like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then around 4 to 6 weeks, they wake up. They maybe sleep for 20 to 30 minutes. They want to be held all the time, and it's like physically exhausting for the parents. So it can be a very tough phase.
And while we're talking about sleep, I like to mention that a lot of babies, if they do begin to give you a stretch of sleep, oftentimes their days and nights are reversed at this age. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So your stretch of sleep may unfortunately come during the day, not at night. So, my couple recommendations there. One is take advantage if you can sleep during the day, do that. If it's your second, that may be very challenging. But if it's your first, I strongly encourage sleeping when you can. And then I tell parents, figure out what is your minimum for survival. And so for me, I needed 4 hour stretch. I actually did not need 6 hours, but in 2 hour stints was not as good for me as a 4 hour stretch. And we figured that out early on, and we did everything we could to protect that. So this was pre-pandemic when my kids were little. So my husband would walk in the door at 6 o'clock. I would say, hello, here's your child, goodbye, don't wake me up until 10. And I would sleep from 6 to 10 and do whatever it took to get that little stretch. And then I was up for a lot of the night. And I could handle it if I got that 4 hours. So I think, my point being protect your sleep however you can. And also don't be surprised if days and nights are reversed. There's a lot of different theories on whether you should wake a sleeping baby during the day to get them to sleep at night or not. I personally never find that very successful. And so I feel like get to sleep when you can. I would rather the baby learn to get a long stretch, get a 4 or 5 hour stretch, and eventually when they correct their days and nights, 6 and 8 weeks, hallelujah, you have your 4 or 5 hour stretch at night. But there are people who think you should wake them, and I certainly tell families, if you want to try it. Give it a couple days. If waking them doesn't work, stop waking them. And I think there's no right or wrong. But for me, I found it best to let them sleep when they wanted to sleep. I found they were better eaters when they were allowed to sleep when they wanted to. They were less fussy. I don't know what did you find, Judith?
No, I feel the same way. I feel like you can't really limit their sleep at this stage. They're definitely at this age where even if their days and nights aren't mixed up, they're still going to bed pretty late. Like a lot of 1-month-olds are going to sleep around 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I feel like it's still pretty chaotic. Like I think of it as their brain waves are still fairly disorganized. They're not making a lot of associations. They tend to just not, there's no real pattern. So I feel like get the sleep when you can. The other thing is, and this is the case for almost all babies at every age, the more they sleep, the better they sleep. So I think that if you limit their sleep during the day, it's very likely that they're going to be really fussy and sleep worse at night. So I don't think you're helping your case by keeping them up during the day on purpose. You'll have a million opinions from all of your friends and parents and this and that, and people will say to you, oh, just don't let them sleep during the day and then they'll sleep well during, like everyone has a different opinion, but in my experience, I agree with you, like just get that sleep where you can. People do say all the time, sleep when they're sleeping. It is hard to do that because during the day you want to do the laundry or deal with your other child or see your friend or, you know what I mean? So it is hard. And this is also the age, this is kind of getting into the feeding part of our discussion, where you can start giving a bottle. Like if you're breastfeeding, you could definitely start. I always tell families to mothers to pump. I don't want them to pump a lot during the day because I don't need to give them another task. But I often say pump after that first breastfeed in the morning, set that bottle aside and let your partner, if you have a partner, or your mother, whoever's around, give a bottle in the middle of the night so you can get that stretch of sleep. Unless your breasts are like bursting with milk and you have to get up and pump anyway. But if you're not one of those people, I think have your partner give a bottle at this point if you're breastfeeding so that you can just get a stretch of sleep. It's really important for your own sanity.
Agreed.
I think if anyone has any questions in particular about sleep, please feel free to, comment below, and we will definitely get to those questions. But now I think we can talk a little bit about feeding, unless Jess, naps? Should we talk about napping a little bit at this stage? I mean, we sort of touched upon it. Naps tend to be, at this age, sometimes you'll get a long one, but it's very common. People say to me, I can't put the baby down. The naps aren't as long as they were, and it's very normal. They may have 10, 20 to 30 minute naps a day, which is, exhausting for you because you don't get a big break, but it is very normal. And I sort of feel like, if you can get one nap a day in the crib or in the bassinet, that's fantastic. But a lot of the naps are at this point are going to be on your chest, in the stroller, on the bouncer, in the boppy. That's all very, very normal. It's not, people, again, you'll hear from a lot of friends, my baby's, 2-3 naps a day and this and that. That's very uncommon at this stage. It still is very, very irregular.
And I agree with you,
Jess,
Judith,
do you have
in terms
anything?
of I tell people, I say exactly what you said. I said, to me, mix it up in terms of napping, once in your arms, once in, if you have a partner, their arms, once in the swing. If you're keeping an eye on them, it's obviously not as safe from a point of SIDS. Once in the bassinet, The goal being in the bassinet, they learn how to sleep in the bassinet. In the swing, maybe they'll learn how to do a 2-hour nap because somehow they magically sleep better there. And so I think it's all about just kind of stations and kind of continuously moving things around and not stressing if it's not the perfect sleep habits you want yet. I do,
Yeah.
and I know that this is a little more controversial, and I don't know that everyone says this, but there are some people, I'm one of them, who really does believe if you want to work on good sleep habits early, I believe around 6 weeks, you can begin to let the baby cry once a day for 10 minutes to see if they'll learn how to put themselves to sleep. My goal there has nothing to do with sleeping longer. It's just if they can begin to learn to put themselves to sleep. That I think will help you when you sleep train around 4 months, because they will know how to put themselves back to sleep in the middle of the night. If you don't do this now, that is totally fine. We're far from 4 months right now, and many people probably never do it. Many people probably begin it a little bit older, but I do think 6 weeks is a reasonable time. It's a very wife food theory. And so what I would do with my first, who we were very interested in sleep training, is once a day, I would swaddle her up, put her in the bassinet when I know she was fed. I would jump in the shower. My shower is 10 minutes. I couldn't hear her at code red level because I was in the shower. Not that my walls are soundproof. I could hear her, but not quite as loud. I couldn't run to her even if I wanted to, because I was now in the middle of taking a shower. I got out of the shower, and if she was still crying, I rocked her to sleep. And if she had fallen asleep, amazing, accomplished. And either way, I got a shower in for the day, which felt like quite the accomplishment. So I think that's really reasonable. I don't think you have to do it. With my second, I didn't. My second was a vomiter, and I couldn't. She would vomit the minute she cried. I will say she was much harder to sleep train down the road than my first was. Because of that or not, who knows? But I think it's certainly for people who really come in saying sleep training is one of my main goals with this child. I'd say that's certainly something you can think about at 6 weeks. Sorry for the screams in the background. For people who aren't interested, that's also totally fine. Still there? So Judith seems to be coming in and out, and are you still there, Judith? You cut out for a
I'm
little
here. Oh, I wasn't even saying anything.
It's sort of a tough driving zone. No, now I can hear you. Yep.
I was saying I don't usually do it until around.
So Dr. Hoffman's cutting in and out. So maybe I'll just talk until you kind of have a better connection. You're a little bit in and out. I think Dr. Hoffman was saying she usually begins a little bit later, more like 2 months. And that's also perfectly fine. While we're waiting for Dr. Hoffman to rejoin, maybe we'll talk a little bit about, I think Dr. Hoffman had some feeding. I like to warn parents that around a month, many breastfed babies begin to space out their pooping. Formula-fed babies should really still be going once every 1 to 3 days at the minimum, and it can be many, many more times than that. Breastfed babies, however, can go as rare as once a week, and that's normal, and that's really a big shift for babies who make that shift. Not all babies do. Some babies still stool, 6, 7 times a day. But for babies who start skipping days, it can really cause some great panic from our parents. So I like to just mention that stooling every 1 week would be totally fine if the babies are breastfeeding. Not to panic if that happens. The once a week is quite messy. It's oftentimes up the back, into the hair. When I was pregnant with my first, a friend of Judith's and I, Anjali, said, whatever you do, cut them out of the onesie. Don't try to pull the dirty onesie over their head. And I remember thinking, this is the stupidest piece of advice ever. And then I also remember standing over my baby at 1 a.m, about to pull a very dirty onesie off over her head and thinking, don't do it. She's going to end up needing a bath at 1 a.m. So this is very common, this, once a week, up the back, disgusting poop. Don't be surprised. Although they may continue to poop 6 times a day, and that's also perfectly fine. A lot of variability at this age. So I just like to warn parents about that. Judith, I think you were going to talk
Am
about
I
feeding.
back? Am I here?
You're back. Yeah.
Okay,
So now
sorry.
I'll pause for you. Yeah.
Clearly, I need to like figure out my schedule in terms of getting home in time for these lives. So, in terms of feeding, I mean, there's a lot of variability. Obviously, it's not the same for every family. For those who are breastfeeding, usually it starts to spread out a little bit, but I still sort of feel like you're in that phase where it's pretty much breastfeeding on demand. But by no means, as long as your baby's growing well, you don't have to wake them up anymore to feed them. I mean, I often tell parents, like, the only reason to really wake them up to feed them at this stage would be if you're, producing so much that you're getting engorged. A quick pump to prevent that engorgement, I think that's fine. And I also think at this stage, if you haven't already introduced a bottle, which I usually say you should start doing around 2 weeks if you're breastfeeding, go ahead and introduce a bottle. It's a good thing to have, it's a good option to have. I mean, right now with COVID, people aren't physically going back to work as much, so it's a little bit different. But I think it does give you flexibility, allows your partner to feed, your grandparent or a babysitter to feed, and it gives the mother the ability to like go out and run an errand or go for a walk and get some, time alone, because this is where kind of the fatigue and exhaustion tends to kick in, and the adrenaline of the first few weeks wears off and you start to really feel that fatigue. So I think it's good to not feel like your baby can't feed if you're not there. I don't know, Jess, do you have anything that you typically tell families at this stage? No.
No,
And then
I
with
think that's
formula
perfect.
fed
Vitamin
babies,
D.
yeah, continue the vitamin D. Formula fed babies, not so much changes. You sort of just like go up as they want. If they're demanding more, let them have a little bit more formula. Usually at this stage, they're having anywhere from 2 to 4 ounces per feed if you're giving a bottle. This is where sort of like reflux can kick in a little bit, so the feeds can get a little more difficult. So you may have a little bit of arching, a little more spitting up, and that's all very normal. If the baby is really, arching so much and so fussy around feeds that it's an issue that you're not able to get a feed in, then you should let your doctor know. You should definitely let us know about that if that's happening.
Related, I often, if it's okay to talk about just kind of fussy babies at this age, I think it like ties in well to reflux. So
Absolutely.
I kind of say, this colicky baby idea, we call it the witching hour. Many people say it's from 3 weeks to 3 months of age. The rule of 3 is about 3 hours of crying at a time. Oftentimes sets in around now. Even if it's not a witching hour, if you're just fussy during the day, it's not a big surprise. So I oftentimes at this visit will go through some things to try. To troubleshoot. Oftentimes there's not one answer. It's a little column A, a little column B, but I like to go through some ideas. So I say, the things I like to think about with my babies, I think about gas. Babies are gassy. Believe it or not, it's a skill to go to the bathroom. You have to kind of peristalsis and contract your gut in a certain order, and it sounds ridiculous, but babies have to learn it. So if you have gassy babies, I put that in one category of baby, and similarly, I put reflux, this idea of upper esophageal gas coming up the back of the throat, also in the category of fussy babies. And so things that I do for the general GI tract, you can bicycle the legs in a bicycle motion when they're laying on their back. You can try massaging the stomach. A lot of them like a little bit of pressure over the belly, so laying with their belly over your shoulder, over your leg, over your arm. I find a lot of the gassy babies like what I call the super baby hold, so putting their head kind of in your hand and their belly across your forearm with their limbs hanging over either side, and kind of they're flying through the air. I don't know how else to really show that. I'm not very good at it, but I find men who have longer arms and bigger hands are a little better at that position. You can try probiotics like BioGaia is reasonable. You can try gas drops like Mylicon and Gripe water. You can try a warm bath. Sometimes that softens up the lower musculature and lets them have a poop, which can help. You can try changing your diet if you're breastfeeding. Whether it really will help or not is a little bit tough, and I don't love giving moms tasks, but if you're desperate because you have a fussy kid, it might be worth trying. I try to have moms eliminate really gassy foods, beans, broccoli, cabbage, really acidic foods, tomato sauce, lemonade, and spicy foods like Indian food, and think about dairy. If you're going to start messing with your diet, I tend to be a person, I don't know what you say, Judith, I tend to say eliminate everything. Eat the blandest diet for 1 week. If it doesn't work, it ain't you. Eat what you want, and you can kind of be guilt-free. And if it works, then I say start adding back in foods and see if you can figure out, what the trigger food is. If you figure out the trigger food, for me, it was Indian food was my first. I could eat it. I wasn't doing damage to my baby. I was just making my life a lot harder by listening to her cry for 3 hours. So, you can kind of decide how much you want to mess with your diet. Holding the baby up for about 10 minutes after a feed can be helpful for reflux. We do have medication for reflux if nothing else works. So as Dr. Huffman said, certainly call us. And then the other things that people think could be causing some of the fussiness, one of the big concepts is this concept of the fourth trimester, that babies are supposed to kind of still be in you and we're still developing, and they get really a little bit overstimulated and over irritated. So that's the rule of the 5 S's, which I can never quite remember. I think it's swaddle, side, turn them on their side position a little bit. I write them down so I can remember. Shush them, the they even make a little machine that does it now. Swing and forth, obviously giving head support. I think similar to the swing is the idea of the yoga ball. I used to sit on the yoga ball and bounce my second in my arms a lot. She really liked that movement. And then lastly, sucking on something, so the pacifier. And that's the idea, of these babies who really need kind of a little bit more time just to develop and be awake and alert in the world. Similarly, sorry, Jude's taking a while. Similarly, I talk about making sure they're not overstimulated. I think sometimes they just need some destimulation. I tell families it's like when I get home from work late on Mondays and I'm exhausted and I really want to go to sleep, but my brain won't turn off, so I put on House Hunters and kind of just stare at the TV. You need baby House Hunters. You need, white noise or shower running or a vibrating chair or something, swing, something very low level, constant stimulus can sometimes help. And the last thing I recommend trying is watching their sleep patterns. Many people believe babies shouldn't be awake more than about 90 minutes. It's this idea of this 90-minute cycle of being awake. And if they miss that 90 minutes, they're going to be awake for another 90 minutes. Some of these kids, that was my first. And then they're really irritable. Polly Moore wrote a book about the 90-minute nap program or something like that. I should really give it better. 90-minute baby sleep program. And that was really, really a huge help for my first, who really thought sleep. So some people find that really helpful. I don't think there's any one answer for the fussy baby, but I think you can kind of trial and error and see which ones tend to work for your baby. And if none of them work, you can know that it will pass. Like we said, it's about 3 weeks to 3 months. It's not 3 weeks to 13 years. There is an end to this. But I find if you can kind of find what works better, it sometimes gives you a little bit of relief in this period.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like the colicky stuff, it's a lot of trial and error. I mentioned a lot of things that Dr. Grant just mentioned. I feel like you just have to do what works. And I agree, if a baby is awake for more than 2 hours, that's usually, a recipe for a fussy baby. That being said, I remember I was like, Margot's been up for more than 2 hours. I have to get her to go to sleep. Getting her to take a nap sometimes was more stressful than dealing with her as a fussy baby. I remember at some point I'd be like, we've been trying to put her down for a nap for 2 hours. And sometimes you just have to throw in the towel, put them in the carrier, go for a walk, put them in the stroller. We ended up in the, with her in the carrier, at 5 a.m, many, many days, which, probably reflects upon what kind of a, high maintenance infant she was, but it did pass. By the time she was 3 or 4 months, she was much more sort of routine and regular. She was still always a little high maintenance, and she might be still to this day, but the sleep stuff really settled down somewhere between 3 and 4 months. I don't know, Jess, is there anything else that you wanted to touch upon? I feel like developmentally not a lot is going, their brains are still very sort of primitive. They're still doing a lot of the sort of jittery movements, and their chin quivers and their feet quiver, and all of that is very normal. You might start to be getting a little more eye contact because they're waking up more, but don't panic if you're not getting smiles. It's very normal for them not to smile at this stage. They're not necessarily going to be following you. They may respond to noise a little bit. You're not going to get a lot of sort of interaction with them at this stage. What I often say is your whole job right now is to make them feel secure. So you just want to hold them and let them know that someone's there when they're crying and when they're sad. not sad, just when they're crying. It's hard to know if they're really sad at this stage. But your whole job is to like sort of bond with them and establish that you are supporting them, and that you're reacting to their needs. That's really all you have to do. People often will say, should I be reading to them? Should I be doing flashcards? Should I be playing Mozart? And like all of those things are nice, but they're by no means necessary. You're really just there to establish the connection right now.
I do think you can start tummy time at this age.
Yeah.
I don't think it's, the end of the world if you don't, but I think you can begin. Most babies hate tummy time. They either fall asleep or scream their heads off. So I tend to say like 3-minute spells is probably enough. 3 minutes here, 3 minutes there, maybe one time on your chest, one time on the play mat, maybe one time with a little boppy pillow under you, so you're getting a little neck being picked up. Again, I don't think it's good if you haven't done it. It's okay, but it's one thing you can start at this age. Other than that, I agree. There's really not much to be doing yet at this age.
Yeah, I think it's all about kind of establishing your connection with the baby. And then, the other thing is just taking care of yourselves. So parents, this is the stage where I think I touched upon a little bit earlier, where you start to feel tired. Like it's exhausting. You've been doing it for a month. You're not sleeping. So give yourself a break every once in a while. Some people are not ready to have a babysitter or a nanny at this stage, but like let your husband or your partner take the baby for an hour, go out for a walk, talk to a friend on the phone, or meet a friend for a walk. It's good to start leaving the house a little bit at this point, because I feel like you get a little cabin fever.
Agreed.
So I don't know if anyone has any specific questions. Next week we'll be talking about the 2-month-olds, which is a little more. There's more going on, I would say. There's more to do. I think at 1 month you're still really in survival mode, and as Jess alluded to, the fourth trimester. But anyway, it looks like I don't think we have any questions. Jess, do you have any questions on your side?
Nope, I don't see any.
All right, fantastic. So we hope to see you guys next week. Come with questions. We're happy to answer anything, or you can always direct message us on Facebook or Instagram. We're happy to answer any questions.
Have fun. Enjoy.
All right. Bye, guys.